Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Dr. Eduardo Diaz. He's the founder at Advancing X. Eduardo, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you're doing with Advancing X is really cool. It's really innovative. And I'm kind of just fascinated about it. But maybe before we kind of get into exactly what it is, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Sure. Where did it all start? So I was born and raised in Santa Rosa, California.
Okay.
And so I guess I was a country boy, really, because I grew up in the hills. Went to traditional schools like Pioneer High School and then Santa Rosa Junior College.
Okay. And what did you take there?
Psychology from the get-go.
Okay.
That's been an interest of mine. In fact, I was very much interested in the NASA program, and I was a Trekkie, so I watched a lot of Star Trek. And so, I could already visualize myself as being, like a counselor on one of those aircrafts or one of those spaceships, So it was already in my mind that's kind of where the direction I wanted to go.
That's awesome. So you've been to kind of a bunch of different colleges and universities. Kind of walk us through your kind of educational career.
Sure. So with the JC, Santa Rosa Junior College, over there I earned 2 associate's degrees.
Okay.
And then it was in psychology, and I also studied multiple languages like American Sign Language, French, and Spanish.
Okay. Why the languages, out of curiosity?
I love talking with people from all kinds of cultures,
okay,
different backgrounds. To me, it's a fascinating thing. And so I fell in love with the idea of being able to understand different languages rather than imposing, my one language, on them. I could learn other people's languages and then go to their country and spend some time there and really engage with them. And so that's why I had an interest with learning more languages.
Sure. Okay. So walk me through kind of the art side of your university career.
The art side. I don't know the art side. I do know that after the JC, I went on to Sonoma State University, where I earned my bachelor's degree in psychology. And then I also had to go to UC Berkeley as well, because Sonoma State University ran out of classes, some advanced courses that I was taking, and they had a partnership with Berkeley. So I took those in conjunction with SSU and wrapped that up and went on to Walden University, where I completed my master's degree and my doctoral degree in psychology.
So what made you kind of want to continue down that path?
Well, I love research. I just, it was a big deal to learn about me.
Sure.
and how my mind, works and why I interpret things the way I interpret them. And psychology is, it's the study of the self. And so as I continued down that process, the more I understood about how my mind functions, the more I could understand the perspectives of others when they were sharing those perspectives. It was really it's definitely an eye opener, And then you go to other countries, like I've been to Germany, so I studied German.
Sure.
And went to Germany and spent a couple of weeks there. Went a couple times, met some colleagues there, and you get their perspective and take on life, and you start to find out that a lot of people have a lot of similar perspectives. They just come from different backgrounds, but their vision of different things is kind of similar, to achieve something greater, to move something forward.
Sure. No, I think that's great. So you walk me through kind of your post-university career. Obviously, you kind of went back to school, correct? Like you worked for a bit, you went back to school,
Yep.
Then you kind of are back kind of working and doing a bunch of things. So kind of walk me through the different types of jobs you've had, because you've had a bunch of them, and a lot of them are really interesting.
So, back in high school days, I actually worked as a at the cabinet shop where I was responsible for quality control.
Okay.
So any cabinet that would go out of the facility, I had to make sure everything was exactly correct. So I ended up creating an eye for detail. So that was an interesting 6 years off and on.
Sure.
Definitely a learning experience. From there, I went into restaurants. I worked at multiple restaurants, at an airport restaurant, at a couple of restaurants that are like just really high end, almost like Italian, American mix, French restaurants. And then at some point, I ended up working at Acapulco restaurants, where I became the general manager, and enjoyed that for a while. And then I went off and actually opened up my own small restaurant, ran that for a little bit, and I was fortunate that someone came by and said, "Oh, we want to purchase your restaurant." So I got to experience what was that was like, to sell my first business.
Sure.
Then I got into the industry of IT a bit, where I met a really good friend of mine. Well, that's where our friendship started, and now it's like 22 years later, and we're best of friends.
That's great.
But during that process, he and I thought, wouldn't it be great to create a marketing company that could, be a little bit better than what's out there? And so we thought that would be kind of fun. And sure enough, we ended up starting our first startup, 1996. And we launched that. It was a rough start at first, but I already had a good introduction to statistical measures and looking at things. And so I started applying that in a marketing level. And we found out that there was a lot of business owners who wanted to have more from their marketing experience, more metrics, more measurable things. And so we did that. We ended up creating loyalty programs, gift card programs, and the company grew. It did very well. And then after, before the 17 years when we were bought out, we had already licensed 2 other times to a couple of other companies who were using our software. Yeah, it was a great experience. But we essentially were always on that cusp of how can we make this better? How can we advance this more? And so we started getting involved in touchscreen technology just as it was coming out.
Okay.
It wasn't really being applied to anything. It was just more about, oh, look at this new technology. And so we started getting involved in these touchscreens and how can we use those for customers so they can kind of see what's new and where can that be applied and where can it really be utilized. And so I went to a couple of different, hotel managers and ended up building relationships with a lot of different hotels and all the managers across Northern California. And so then we implemented these touchscreen systems for destination travelers, and that became fascinating. A lot of challenges, though. We were kind of a little bit ahead of the technology that could really support that type of infrastructure.
Sure.
And so we had to back away from that because too many problems. So we really focused on what was working for us. And then we started going into developing our technology toward the cloud and making it more user friendly and beautiful and things like that. And so once we started getting into creating programs for iOS and Android and such,
sure.
That's when another company from Las Vegas heard about us through, mutual friends. You know how it works.
Yep.
Somebody talks about you, it goes on from there. We got a call and a few discussions later, and, we were bought.
Nice. That's cool, man. No, that's great. I love that. And I love how you've done kind of a bunch of different businesses in a bunch of different industries and how you take things from kind of those different industries and kind of all tie it together into what you're currently doing. And I think that's quite fascinating. So what exactly is Advancing X and why did you decide to found it?
That is an excellent question. So Advancing X, we essentially are focused on human factors.
Okay.
So one of our goals is to open up a research campus and technology accelerator. And so that's kind of where we focus on that. Now, the research part of it, of course, is all psychology driven, which falls back on my doctoral work, where I look at functional characteristics of individuals and how those individuals can influence the outcome of an entire team and their goal to achieve a common goal.
Okay.
So, I'll break that down a little bit.
Sure.
So as you know, everyone has a different personality styles and ways of doing things. And during stressful situations, whether it's low stress or high stress, our desire to do something will change based on the level of stress.
Sure.
And so I look at those characteristics and I evaluate them. Now, I didn't kind of just fall into it. It was more of during my literature review, I studied a lot of other assessments out there, like Myers-Briggs and other assessments, Weems and things like that, and found that every doctor that did their research on behavior, they list a lot of gaps that should be researched. And among those gaps, there was a specific area related to teams. Okay. And the measurement of characteristics and what those characteristics are that can be measured and that have a significant influence on how teams interact with each other, individuals interact with each other to create that team. And so even in like Myers and Briggs research, they have it in there where they're focused on individuals, and they did a lot of great work that can help individuals understand who they are. But they recommended in their research that the application of one person working with another person really needs to be investigated more, needs to be researched more. And so there was another gap right there. So I tied them all together, started realizing there's a pattern that a lot of doctors really need measurable, characteristics that can be applied in a team setting. And once I saw that, there were several others. I focused on that one. Okay. And I just dove into it. I started looking at, what theoretical construct can be applied to this, and I went through theory after theory after theory, and I'll tell you what, it's very, very challenging to go through this and that, and you start finding why one doesn't work over the other, and then eventually I did find something called personality systems interactions, which was developed in Germany by what is now a good friend of mine, Dr. Julius Kuhl. And I found out Dr. Kuhl was alive, which I usually in my mind, when I see that there's a theorist,
sure,
I obviously assume that person is no longer, with us on this earth. And,
sure.
And boy, I was wrong when I looked at the research that he had accomplished, and there was an email address. And I thought, well, nobody from the 1930s would have an email address,
Sure.
So I sent him an email, and he responded, and one thing led to another. I got on a plane, went to Germany, spent some time with him and Dr. Kazin and a few others, and they gave me permission to use their theoretical structure, and I did. And sure enough, I was able to find a significance in measuring the specific characteristics of one individual, and then, of course, applying that to a team setting. And from there, I resolved the gap. I solved one of the questions that a lot of doctors had, is how do you measure the team characteristics, and I did do that.
Wow, that's actually really cool. So when doing this, is it something that somebody like yourself would have to go in and work with like individuals or teams to actually sort this out, or can people do it themselves, or how does that kind of work?
Yeah, so we ended up creating, there's an online assessment. It's a self-assessment that can be accomplished in 20 minutes. And so that assessment gives us the basics, what I call the OTI, or Organizational Team Index.
Okay.
So that assessment, then once we have that, we can then look at, the team dynamics as opposed to like what the teams are doing in their particular task. So that's actually interesting because, when you really go back to what is Advancing X, our whole focus is applying human behavior research findings into actionable measures to support team outcomes. That's it right there. That's our vision.
Sure.
And to keep improving upon that. And we are looking to find the best and the most important, variables that influence, teams and decision making, success, things like that.
No, that's okay. Keep going. Sorry.
Oh yeah, sure. So when you look at, okay, well, how can others out there apply this? We look at what it is that they're doing. So let's take a couple of examples that are very passionate and close to my heart. Let's say NASA or military, things like that. So if you have NASA as an example, and they are planning, as we all know, they're planning to send people to Mars.
Sure.
Well, if you have, a whole bunch of astronauts, let's say there's a panel of 100 that are available, and all those 100 astronauts, they're all going to have the knowledge and the skills and the abilities that NASA is already looking for. But NASA can only take 4 on the Orion, for example.
Right.
So if you're going to put 4 of those astronauts, how do you really pick 4 out of 100 people who are clearly phenomenal? You know, they have it all. I mean, it's like, well, you're all 4.0s.
Yeah.
You've all invented 85 things.
Sure. It's not like flip a coin or paper, rock, scissors, right?
Certainly not. And then from a statistics or a metrics point of view, do you really rely on saying, well, I really like you a lot more than I like the rest, so I'm going to pick you? That doesn't quite work. You've got to look at what's going to be best for the entire team that's going. I kind of joke around once in a while when I get questions, people ask me, well, if you were to, support NASA in the selection process, the final selection process of these 4 astronauts, who would you send? And I would jokingly say, well, whoever pissed me off was the first one to go because they're not coming back.
Sure, right? Yeah, that makes sense. But I think realistically, though, no, like not a lot of people would think about that stuff, right? And that's what kind of I find kind of fascinating about what you guys are doing, because I think, especially when it comes to doing, like, obviously not everybody's going to go to space, or maybe, hopefully, in maybe some of our lifetimes, some of us will get to go. But the thing that I find really interesting about it is it can be so scientific, right? And when you're looking for a co-founder, even to do like a startup or whatnot, like having the right personality types to hopefully get to the finish line. And by finish line, I mean maybe acquired or kind of success or whatever you define finished. But, just working at startups myself over the years, so many people drop off, right? And so if you can quickly figure out who's going to be compatible with who through kind of research and science, that whole thing just kind of fascinates me.
Yes, no, absolutely. In fact, there's in one of NASA's reports, it was an audit done by the Office of Inspector General at NASA, and they did what a section called Human Health and Performance Risks by Space Environment Hazard. Okay. There are 32 things that have to be resolved before they send anyone to a long-duration space mission like that of Mars. Really? And so, so when you break all those, I mean, it's in different categories. So you can look at isolation, you can look at, radiation and, altered gravity and closed environments. All these different things are different factors that must be considered, and how that's going to impact human beings who are, going to be in those situations. And so you really got to look at, everything you possibly can to increase the success of the overall team. So yes, even if it's just, 4, 5, 6, 10% performance, that's a big deal. Sure. I mean, you have 4 people, and they're of the greatest minds, on Earth, and you send them out there, and it just happens to be that they don't get along because one of those individuals might not be the same person when the stressful situations start to come up. Sure. We call them latent challenges. So latent challenges are unknown events. So let's say an unknown event happens, and it could be a number of things. I don't want to limit it to one, but let's say an event happens, and then that one individual, reverts back to their immediate fight or flight situation, and they start to, hoard, particular things like food and supplies, because they start having a fear that, their life could be at risk. Well, when they start doing those little acts of deviant behavior, they end up impacting the whole team, because, then you got, the other person is waking up one day and they're wondering where their pencil went. And how come every single day something seems to be disappearing? What is going on here? And that starts creating, this concern amongst the group. And what ends up happening is you have a small little failures, one after another, that build up and build up and build up until you have an ultimate mission failure. And by the time that happens, of course, everyone's wondering what happened.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's interesting, right? That's cool.
Right? Yeah.
So I'm curious you at least on your site, you have like a human to machine type of stuff in research. So Have you done much research in kind of the human to machine stuff, or not really?
So I could say that we are currently pending a project where we are developing a nanosuit
Oh,
that's going to be correlated with psychological functional characteristics. So that is classified.
okay. No, sure. That's wild. That's cool though. So,
Yeah, it's neat, but I could tell you that essentially what we're looking at is we are correlating the way in which body movements, whether it be hands, legs, torso, the whole body, how that a body is moving with the other bodies that are moving the team inside of an isolated environment, and how those movements are correlated with the functional characteristics that make up the total team. And so we're looking for significance on that. So what will end up happening is when we find those correlations, then we create the nanosuit and then we take it to real time. So like right now, for example, if I were to go into a company and we were to assess all their teams and support increasing their team efficiency by just moving a few people around or hiring in new people that improve the overall team design,
sure.
we could do that, and then we could go back and we can measure every 3 months to a follow-up to make sure that that team is optimized and that they're meeting the goals that we expect them to achieve. So we can look at those things. But in real time, it's a different situation. Like when you send 4 astronauts, and they're out there doing their thing, we can actually monitor their entire performance by the minute.
Wow.
So we can see if they're starting to deviate from what is the expected norm. And if they do, we can recognize that because of the statistics. And we can then, talk with them and get their mind back on track so that they don't deviate so much before it leads to impacting the team and what they're looking to achieve.
Wow, that's wild. Like I'm just trying to like comprehend the magnitude of what you just said, right? Like but seriously, like that's phenomenal, right? That you guys can do that to
Okay.
somebody out, especially so far away, right? Like in the outer space. I get like you guys have figured out communication I'm assuming it's all through satellite.
So that's another part of tech has to resolve how things are going to be transferred as far as technology. There are currently a lot of companies out there who are developing those solutions.
Sure.
So we're watching them.
No, okay, fair enough. That's really cool. So you covered it a little bit earlier, but you're looking to build a research kind of campus. What exactly are you doing with that? Because I found that really fascinating when we talked months ago about kind of you being on the show. So what exactly are you doing with that?
So we're really big on innovation and
Okay.
looking at other opportunities that can advance technology. And so when you have a research campus, that's where things are really measured, and we can look at it scientifically. But then you have the technology accelerator, and they're both on the same property. They
Okay.
work in collaboration to support each other. So what ends up happening is the technology accelerator. Our goal is to support 1,000 technology entrepreneurs. They basically become members, like you go into a gym. You're a member of a gym and you go to work out.
Interesting.
In this case, you're a member of this technology accelerator, and you go to advance your technology, but you have a lot of people working with you to help you achieve what you're looking to achieve. So as an example, our combined advisory board is well over 100 people,
Wow.
and in different industries, from nanosatellites, all the way down to biology, and farming as an example. So you have all these entrepreneurs in the accelerator, and they're looking to, let's say they want to create some new way of farming in an enclosed environment. Well, then we can take their proof of concept or their idea, and we can then move it all over to the research campus section where we are testing teams working in isolation, meaning we're actually controlling the air inside of a room that would be consistent to, let's say, that of Mars, where you have to have you have to produce your own oxygen to survive. So we have a same controlled environment, so they can move their farming techniques inside of this isolated area, and then we can test it to see how it applies in the real situation. So there's those opportunities.
Sure. No, that's actually really cool. And like for me, I find that kind of stuff fascinating, right? And so you're kind of in phase one of getting property, or where are you
Yeah.
guys on with that?
Well, so I flew over to Maryland, and we went to the university there. So literally the University of Maryland,
Okay.
and we had several meetings with different members, like from the Department of Commerce and research at the University of Maryland, and a few others. And we were looking at that location being one of the places where we would have a research campus and technology accelerator. And so, yes, it is an option. And actually, we are planning to have one there as well. But we're also looking to have one in the Sacramento, California area as well.
Okay.
And then we have a few other locations that are pending. I mean, I just finished a call only a couple of weeks ago. We may end up opening up another one in, not just Puerto Rico, but Dubai and Germany. So we're looking at those as options. But at the moment, we are wrapping up the final negotiation of property that we are purchasing here in Sacramento, California. And I just constant meetings with, project managers and the county. And so the whole planning thing, because there's a big whole project going on, an innovation district that's being created. And so we're likely to be one of the first shovels in the ground in that area.
That's awesome, man. So, and maybe this is kind of a stupid question, but when you're building these research campuses, does geographic location matter, or is it just you want to be spread out as possible and kind of get the most minds from different parts of the world working on something, or why do you pick certain areas?
Yeah, I think you said it well. I mean, it's about becoming accessible to a lot of different minds, because then you're creating a kind of a hub at different places, and then those hubs become the ability for us to interact at all the other locations.
Sure.
So the more we can get other cultures involved and other different perspectives involved, the more innovation will happen.
Sure.
It's perspective. It's perspective. There's a letter it's a letter of support that we received from Maryland Department of Commerce, and I'll read you a sentence from it.
Sure.
So it says here, the Goddard Space Flight Center, University of Maryland, and the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory have expressed interest in the human factor applications and research being pioneered by Dr. Diaz and his team. We had preliminary discussions about establishing a research center and technology accelerator in the state to look at this problem. And it goes on about, the NRL and the ARL, which is the Navy Research Lab and the Army Research Lab. So that's kind of there's a lot of others out there who have incredible minds that can really support the advancement of everything that we're looking to do in terms of innovative technology and moving things forward and, creating something that will really bring about positive social change for not just, the United States, but for the world.
Sure. Well, and I think the thing that's interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but at least that where my mind goes is if they're all these research campuses are under like the Advancing X kind of brand, you guys can kind of share resources and findings and,
Correct.
almost anything, right? Where
Correct.
I'm not saying that like universities, for example, don't do that, and I'm sure they do, but it's got to be a little bit more like competitive, right? Like, I don't know, a big university is probably like, well, I don't really necessarily want to share everything with potentially like a competitor university, where you guys are just like, I want to do this kind of for the globe and,
right.
And kind of beyond, and you're going to share stuff, and it's not really necessarily like a competition between campuses, or maybe it's healthy competition, but you're trying to like share everything, right? Am I grasping that? Okay. No,
yeah.
Cool.
It's a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
It's collaborative. And yes, a healthy competition would be correct. So some of the things that we have set up, for example, I sit on the advisory board for Next Phase Foundation, and Next Phase Foundation, sure. They have, an agreement with NASA for their IP technology transfer program.
Yeah.
So you recall that one?
Yeah, no, I had Robin on the show actually. So yeah, it's totally,
Excellent.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yes, excellent, excellent. So you get the gist of it. So in this situation here, you have all these different entrepreneurs who are creating their proof of concept or whatever have you, and then they're gonna compete to win financial funding to get their idea to the next stage. So that will be their. But there's just so much involved in this. I mean, there's the level at which, okay, let's take one entrepreneur as an example. One entrepreneur that comes in to the accelerator and they're like, hey, I've got this idea and, I've been working on it for the last 6 months and I really need, a roadmap, to do this. And they might go, and it's not my strength. I mean, my strength is, software development,
sure.
And so I understand that. I completely understand that. So, that's where I get to sit down with them and ask them a whole bunch of, awesome questions and they answer that and they kind of visualize what their definite chief aim is, what they're looking to achieve with their new idea. And once we establish that, we work our way backward. And so we start looking at, different milestones that they're going to need to achieve along their roadmap to get where they want to go. So we create those action plans, the timelines, and all the measurable outcomes. Now, along each milestone, that's where we introduce a different advisor who will help them, go, okay, let's look at this now. You've achieved all these, great, but now you need to do this aspect of it, And then, of course, they'll reach a level where they've got their prototype, and let's just say it's like a nano satellite,
sure.
And they've created this little nano satellite, and they've got the working prototype. They've already done the testing inside the research campus area, and they're ready to go and put it out there in low Earth orbit.
Sure.
Well, we could reach out to a couple of, collaborative partners. I probably can't say their names right now.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, no, so, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so how are you funding all this? Because it's got to be not cheap.
It is not. It is not cheap. So we have a lot of investors who have been asking a lot of different questions and such, different people who are looking to put money into this.
Sure.
So we are looking at those as potential avenues. At the moment, I'm self-funding.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So there's other things as well. I mean, when we get the other research of this project that we're working on that involves the nanotechnology for the nanosuits, that, of course, there's always, as a company, there's always going to be some type of, profit margin somewhere.
Sure.
And, we'll just apply that. We'll reinvest that into the development of the technology accelerator and the research campus. So there's those things. But there's also the membership.
Right.
So you have 1,000 entrepreneurs inside of a facility, and they're all paying, your membership to be there. That of course sustains it. That's the model. That's the business model. So yeah, there's that.
No, that's great. So is it too early to kind of estimate when you'll have the first one kind of up and running, or is it still kind of too preliminary?
I'd like to say in 2 years.
Okay.
It'll be up and running, but it depends. So, if it turns out that one of these other prospect locations, like I don't want to put pressure on anyone, but
sure.
Let's say one of these other locations says, you know what, we'll give you $6 million to get this thing going right now.
Sure.
Well then we would open up in 12 months.
Got you.
Sure.
Okay.
That could happen.
Sure. So, and how are you kind of working with other kind of institutions? Because you mentioned some countries kind of all over the world. Is that just through kind of online networking or through your community? Or how did you kind of find and get interest from other countries?
So I back to advisors, and I travel a lot.
Okay.
And I go to a lot of conventions, like the Space Expo that I just went to in Pasadena, California.
Sure.
And just meet people, network, talk to them, get out there, online. Just I've been in the tech world for quite some time, and so it's really working with the whole team. It's never been about just me and my knowledge. It never has been.
Sure.
This thing has developed from so many different perspectives and people who have been through some aspect of business so many times that they're very familiar with it. And so when you combine, 10, 20, 30 people on different advisory boards, and they're all different, they help guide the company as it continues to move forward. So that's where it is, all networking.
No, that's kind of the answer I was hoping you'd give, because I think some people always no, but I think sometimes people struggle with how to move their idea or meet people kind of outside of their country, right? And I think there's not really an easy answer to that. Like, and it's work, and you have to, travel and meet
Yep.
people online and make the effort and go to conferences or different things and meet people. I think that's really great. But I'm kind of curious to know where do you kind of see this whole kind of research kind of space area kind of going? Because in my opinion, I think we're almost at like the beginning of kind of the whole like big technology kind of space revolution. And I think that, yeah, we've been at it for, decades, and we've had obviously the internet and technology and stuff, but I think like we're about to get like really, really cool. Do you agree with that? Or like, I've been watching that like Year Million show on National Geographic, and it's just like fascinating where things are going to go. So it's like, to me, it's like we're at like this exciting time in like human history where we can actually build some of the stuff that we've kind of dreamt about for, thousands of years. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's like I found no. Because part of me thinks that like you kind of mentioned like Star Trek and stuff, right? Like some of that stuff just wasn't buildable years ago, and now you start seeing some of that stuff come reality, and it's just awesome and like mind blowing to me, right? That we can finally like build some of this stuff.
Yes, yes, it is incredible the way in which technology is moving. And it's also can be scary, but it depends on who you talk with. I
Sure.
just had a meeting just this week with someone that I randomly met,
Okay.
and he happens to be in the world of testing, for security and seeing if something it can be accessed by someone from the outside. A very bright individual, and I never asked him, but I'm of the assumption that he's in his early 20s.
Interesting.
And that fits with the way technology is moving, where my own 15-year-old daughter has more experience in using, some type of design and video, tools on her computer than I even understand. And I'm in tech.
Yeah. Totally. No.
So kids are, they're getting more exposure to hands-on technology, and so they're already used to it. So when it comes time where they have an opportunity to dream, because they have less barriers to hold them back from dreaming, and so they dream these different ideas of how these things can be applied. And all of a sudden, you're having innovative thoughts at a teenage age, and that's just incredible.
No, totally. So is there a way that people can get involved with Advancing X? Is it too early? How do people kind of...
Yeah, no, not at all. Just go to advancingx.com and shoot me an email. I already have a lot of different entrepreneurs who have reached out to me, and while I do not have the membership fee in place at the moment, I'm already helping them, because again, it's not really about the money. It's about helping others.
Sure.
So they can shoot me an email, and we can begin dialogue and look at what they're looking to achieve. So, but yeah, just go to advancingx.com.
Perfect. Well, Eduardo, we're coming to the end of the show. So, is there any other places people can get more information about you guys? Obviously, advancingx.com, but are you guys on all the other social media channels as well?
We are on Twitter. I believe it's also at AdvancingX, and Facebook. But on Facebook, ours is Advancing Exploration.
Okay.
So, yep. And then LinkedIn, which would be at AdvancingX.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you and following kind of your journey through all these kind of campuses and the research you guys are doing.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, man. We'll talk soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. The music for the show was done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.